Hi, Cian here, bringing you an anthology of celestial arts. Before we get started, please like, subscribe, comment, share if you dare and care, with peace and love. Now, before we even get into chapter one, I'm gonna start, right up here. Okay. So this is just a concept here that I did expand into 6 chapters, but essentially an advanced guide for dummies manual written by our past genius astrologers themselves. So advanced astrology for dummies, from the Nakshatra palaces of Ujjain to the midpoint grids of modern Hamburg, a masterclass across the centuries. We can imagine a textbook where the dummies aren't the readers, but the very format itself, a humble yellow and black cover containing a seance of the sharpest celestial minds who ever cast a chart. The book is an anthology of first-person lecture chapters, each penned by a historical astrologer, translated for the modern novice, yet dripping with the advanced rigor of their era's peak technique. The framing device is a mischievous editor, the chronoscribe, who has plucked these masters from their timelines and forced them to teach one specific advanced concept to a 21st century beginner. His sidebars titled Genius Rigor Alerts, where he unpacked the dense mathematics, while Dummy's Epiphany boxes translate it into plain English. So this textbook here unifies Western and Vedic traditions not by syncretism, but by showing how each genius confronted the same sky. So our structure and historical POVs, I'll have a prologue here, the chart you don't know you have, and the chronoscribe sets the rules. Every chapter begins with a real chart, like Einstein's, a medieval coronation, a modern client's query, and explodes one advanced technique. Midpoints without the meltdown, nakshatras without the nebulousness, primary directions without the PTSD. The scribe knows this manual assumes you can calculate a basic natal chart, but says you are a dummy, not a dunce. So, now we can begin with chapter 1 here. We're going to talk about the luminous grid of God's secret math. Before we get started, I have to say I don't believe in God personally. The reason that I went along with this narrative is because we're actually looking at it from the POV of someone that would have probably believed in God. All right, this individual, we're looking at the POV from Masha Allah ibn Athari, the 8th century Persian Jewish court astrologer from Baghdad. In our advanced topic we're going over, being taught and expressed here, is Western midpoints and planetary pictures. So I think this is a really fun way to teach astrology, and that's my whole goal on the channel, still to this day. So Masha Allah, tasked with timing the founding of Baghdad, opens his chapter clutching a dusty geocentric armillary sphere. He's appalled the modern world has forgotten that the halfway point between two planets is a pulsating node of synthesized meaning. He teaches midpoints, not as modern alphabet soup, but as sensitive points of celestial sympathy, derived from Ptolemy's tetrabiblos. Okay. He walks through the direct midpoint formula and the 45-degree sort for 8th harmonic analysis. He builds a complete planetary picture for Sun equals Venus, Mars, explaining how this midpoint describes the eroticized will of a caliph. He demonstrates 360-degree midpoint trees by hand. We have our Dummy's Epiphany. We can think of a midpoint like an arranged marriage. Venus and Mars are wedded at a degree. Their household is a new, potent thing that sits exactly between their two palaces. Any planet visiting that house sets off the dynamics of that marriage. And our advanced tool would be how he introduces the 90-degree dial and the Uranian concept of planetary symmetries, making a surprising connection to harmonic theory found in Arabic Zurich tables. He ends by scolding modern astrologers for ignoring in the Sia his midpoint of light and shadow. So that's the concept of chapter 1. And then we'd go on to chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, And we're actually gonna, I will talk about this a little bit. I don't want to go over all of it. I kind of just want to get into chapter 1. But chapter 2, we're going to look at the POV from Vahamihira, the 6th century Indian court astrologer Ujjain, where we're going to go over Vedic nakshatras and the lunar nodes, the serpents, 27 mansions of fate in chapter 2. Chapter 3, we're going to look at the underworld directions of soul's ascension, the POV Placidus de Titus, or the Titus, 17th century Italian Olivetan monk and mathematician. And our advanced topic is primary directions and the Placidian mundoscope. In chapter 4, we're looking at the electric harmonics of the 20th century oracle, or POV Dane Rudar, the 20th century philosopher, artist, astrologer. We're going to learn about harmonic astrology and the age of Aquarius. Chapter 5, Uranian point system and the astrocartographic mandala, POV Elspeth Eberton, 20th century German astrologer and the mother of Reinhold Eberton. And we're going to, of course, talk about trans-Neptunian points, midpoint structures, and cosmobiology. In chapter 6, the Dasha's Divine Choreography of Time, we're going to have our POV K.N. Rao, 20th, 21st century Vedic astrologer, founder of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan. And we're going to go over integration of divisional charts and Jaimini timing. We have an epilogue, the Future Fool's Retrograde Manual. The chronoscribe returns noting that the true dummy was history itself, which forgot to talk to itself. The book closes with a blank astrological chart and a single instruction. Calculate the midpoint of your sun and your moon, then locate its nakshatra. You have just pulled a thread of a dialogue that began in Ujjain, was harmonized in Hamburg, and is now finally in your idiot savant hands. Our appendix is a fold-out genius grid, a laminated cheat sheet combining a 90-degree Uranian dial on one side and the full 27 nakshatra wheel with pada rulers on the other, with conversion tables for Ayanamsha precession, from Lahiri back to the Surya Siddhanta. Alright, let's go over chapter 1 here. The luminous grid of God's secret math, as dictated by Masha Allah ibn Athari, court astrologer to the Caliph al-Mansur, builder of Baghdad, to the dummy student forced upon him by the meddlesome chronoscribe. You sit before me, a creature of the 21st century, clutching a plastic device that draws a birth chart in the blink of an eye, and you think you know the stars. You know nothing. You see a planet in a sign, and you stop. But the sky is not a necklace of isolated beads. It is a luminous grid, a mesh of invisible threads where every point converses with every other point through midpoints. God, the supreme geometrician, did not scatter the planets at random. He placed them so that their halfway points would shout the secrets of destiny. I used this grid to elect the moment for the founding of Baghdad, the city of peace. In 762 CE, today the chronoscribe has handed me a chart of one of your time, a seeker of knowledge, and I shall teach you the first language of the grid. The chart understudy, June 1st, 1990, 12 p.m. London, England. Positions are rounded to the nearest degree for the beginner. Degrees and minutes will be given where precision matters. So clearly we look at our planet, our longitude, and then we have our absolute longitude, okay? So we're using the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, the ascendant, as well as the midheaven. The direct midpoint, a celestial conjugation. Before the fancy dials, learn the root. A direct midpoint is simply the degree of the zodiac that lies exactly halfway between two planets. It is a sensitive point, an invisible third body that fuses the two energies. The formula is as simple as God's arithmetic. Midpoint equals longitude 1, adding longitude 2, dividing 2. Work always in absolute longitude, measured from 0 degrees Aries as 0 degrees through 360 degrees. Never subtract signs. convert first. Absolute conversion. So 0 degrees Aries equals 0 degrees. 0 degrees Taurus equals 30 degrees. 0 degrees Gemini equals 60 degrees. 0 degrees Cancer equals 90 degrees. 0 degrees Leo equals 120 degrees. 0 degrees Virgo equals 150 degrees. 0 degrees Libra equals 180 degrees. 0 degrees Scorpio equals 210 degrees. 0 degrees Sagittarius equals 240 degrees. 0 degrees Capricorn equals 270 degrees. 0 degrees Aquarius equals 300 degrees. 0 degrees Pisces equals 330 degrees. Add the degree within the sign. Now compute the Sun-Moon midpoint for our seeker. Sun equals 10 degrees Gemini equals 70 degrees. Moon equals 25 degrees Pisces equals 355 degrees. Sum equals 70 degrees, adding 355 degrees, we get 425 degrees. Half equals 212.5 degrees equals 212 degrees 30. Convert back. So 212 degrees 30 is past 210 degrees 0 degrees Scorpio. By 2 degrees 30, so the midpoint is 2 degrees 30 Scorpio. This is the Sun-Moon point, the fusion of will and soul, the sacred marriage of the chart. Any transiting or natal planet that touches this degree by conjunction, square, or opposition strikes the core of the native's life like a hammer on a bell. Think of a midpoint as a blended color. So red is Mars, and yellow is the sun, and they paint the midpoint orange. That orange is not red, not yellow, but a new force. A planet landing there sets off both parents at once. The 45-degree key, unlocking the 8th harmonic grid. You will now object, but Master, must I check every midpoint against every planet in 360 degrees? It is chaos. No, God built the cosmos on the hard aspects. Conjunction, 0 degrees. Semi-square, 45 degrees. Square, 90 degrees. Sesquiquadrate, 135 degrees. Opposition, 180 degrees, which are all fractions of 360 degrees divided by 8 equals 45 degrees. This means that in a 45 degrees wheel, all these hard aspect points collapse onto a single line. This is the 8th harmonic grid. The technique is to reduce every planetary longitude and every midpoint to its 45 degrees modulus value, where you simply take the absolute longitude and repeatedly subtract 45 degrees until the remainder lies between 0 degrees 0, 0 and 45 degrees 0, 0. Mathematically, it is the remainder after division by 45. And here's how we reduce our planets. So we see the sun, 70 degrees, so 70 subtracting 45 becomes 25 degrees. The moon, 355, subtracting 315, and 7 multiplied by 45 equals 40 degrees. Mercury is 95 minus 90, we get 5 degrees. Venus, 45 degrees, exactly 45 degrees, the remainder is 0 degrees, and this sits on the Aries point, a world axis. Mars, 140, subtracting 135 equals 5 degrees. Jupiter, 98, subtracting 90 equals 8 degrees. Saturn, 282, subtracting 270 equals 12 degrees. Uranus, 241, subtracting 225 equals 16 degrees. Neptune, 228, subtracting 225 equals 3 degrees. Pluto, 202, subtracting 180 equals 22 degrees. The Ascendant, 164, subtracting 135 equals 29 degrees. and the midheaven, 70 degrees becomes 25 degrees because it shares the sun's axis. Okay? So, the magic here is to calculate the midpoints directly in the 45 degrees modulus. And the rule is to take the two 45 degrees modulus values, average them, and if their sum was greater than 45, we subtract 45 from the average to keep it inside the 0 to 45 circle. And even safer, we can compute the full direct midpoint longitude first. Then we're going to reduce that to a 45 degrees mode. This gives a single degree between 0 degrees and 45 degrees for every planetary pair. Okay, so now we can compute a few key midpoints for our chart, both full and 45 degrees mode, and list them in a midpoint tree. So what that looks like, we have our midpoint, our full longitude, as well as our 45 degrees mode value. So when we look at midpoints on a midpoint tree, we see planets together, like the sun and the moon, and their full longitude together is 212 degrees 30, with their 45 degree mode value being 32 degrees 30. And it goes on to Sun Venus, Sun Mars, Venus Mars, Mercury Mars, Ascendant Midheaven, Moon Pluto, Mercury Saturn, Jupiter Saturn, and Mars Saturn. Okay? So astrology is very precise and exact. There isn't really any shortcuts with astrology. You actually have to do a lot of math, a lot of research. It's not a simple science. But just so you know, a complete midpoint tree lists every pair. So 78 entries for 13 points. A true astrologer, usually draws this by hand, searching for clusters. And now let's talk about what those even are. The clusters. So planetary clusters, for example, we see Mercury and Mars, they're together at 27 degrees 30. And for example, the ascendant midheaven point, 27 degrees exact, and they're sitting together within a 30 orb. Okay? In the language of the grid, we would write Mercury Mars equals the ascendant midheaven. And now we look at Moon Pluto, which is 8 degrees 30, and Mercury Saturn at 8 degrees 30. They're exact to the minute, thus Moon Pluto equals Mercury Saturn. These are clusters. Just because they're sitting together within a specific orb, it needs to be very specific, the degrees. And if they're exact at the minute, that's even more intense, in my opinion. But these are planetary pictures, okay? Symmetrical structures that reveal the soul's architecture. The first picture says, the native's aggressive mental expression, Mercury Mars, is identical to his public identity and life direction, the ascendant midheaven. Being a debater, a strategist, one whose tongue is a sword in career. The second says, deep emotional transformation. Moon Pluto is inseparable from serious structured thought. Mercury Saturn, a mind that grapples with the underworld. So that's how we interpret these planetary pictures and midpoint trees and structures. Pretty simple. If planets are people in a room, a midpoint is the table they share. The 45 degrees wheel is a map of all tables. When two different tables occupy exactly the same spot, those four people are forced to sit together. That is a planetary picture, an inescapable life theme. A 90-degree dial, the square's mirror. The 45 degrees wheel merges all 8 harmonic contacts. For a clearer view of the foundational 4th harmonic grid, including conjunctions, squares, and oppositions, we use the 90-degree dial. Here we fold a circle by 90 degrees. Any position in Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn at the same degree will appear at the same dial point. This dial was whispered to me by the angel of visage, and it becomes the standard tool for rapid symmetrical analysis. Reduce each longitude modulo 90 for our Mercury-Mars picture. Mercury-Mars full is 117 degrees 30. Subtracting 90 degrees, we get 27 degrees 30 on the 90 degrees dial. Ascendant midheaven full, 117 degrees exact turns into 27 degrees exact. Moon Pluto full, 278 degrees 30, subtracting 270 degrees becomes 8 degrees 30. Mercury Saturn full, 188 degrees 30, subtracting 180 degrees, we get 8 degrees 30. Alright. Now we can imagine a circular dial marked 0 degrees to 90 degrees, a pointer at the center. Place every planet and midpoint as a dot. The pointer at 27 degrees 30 hits simultaneously the Mercury-Mars axis and the ascendant midheaven axis, a fourfold symmetry. Mercury and Mars subtracting ascendant, subtracting midheaven equals 0. This is the equation of the native's life purpose. Better yet, the midpoint of Mercury and Mars is at 27 degrees 30, and the midpoint of the ascendant and midheaven is at 27 degrees exact. They are one axis. Therefore, the half sum of Mercury and Mars equals the half sum of ascendant and midheaven. A transiting planet to 27 degrees 30 of any cardinal sign being Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, the 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees positions will light up this entire structure, triggering the native's mental sword into public action. Anti-Sia, the midpoint of light and shadow. Now let's talk about Anti-Sia, the midpoint of light and shadow. Well, I saved the deepest secret for last. The sun's declination binds together degrees that are equidistant from the solstices. Okay? 2 points that have the same solar declination are in Anti-Sion. Their midpoint is always 0 degrees Cancer or 0 degrees Capricorn, the gates of heaven and earth. Anti-Sia are the hidden midpoints of your chart, the shadow reflexes. Now let's go over this formula. It is ridiculously simple. So we see here our Anti-Sion of a point at absolute longitude, and we're always using our mode 360 degrees. Thus the sun at 10 degrees Gemini, 70 degrees, casts its Anti-Sion at 180 degrees, and we're subtracting 70 degrees, we get 110 degrees, which is 20 degrees Cancer. So the midpoint of the sun, again, 70 degrees, and its Anti-Sion, which is 110 degrees, is exactly 90 degrees, 0 degrees Cancer, the point of incarnation. So there is a lot of math involved when we talk about astrology, and there is a lot of technicality. But if you are not willing to learn and use your brain that you were given, well then, I'm sorry to say, you're not going to understand astrology. So now, if someone's Mars sits at 20 degrees Cancer, it lands on the sun's Anti-Sion. But this is far more than a simple conjunction. Why? Because it activates the sun Anti-Sion midpoint, which is what? 0 degrees Cancer. Okay, which is what? A cardinal world axis. Very important you know this. And thus Mars sets off the entire sun shadow complex, bringing the will into physical form with volcanic force. In a natal chart, a planet conjunct another's Anti-Sion functions exactly like a midpoint contact to the Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn axes. Why? Because these are our cardinal signs. This is what we need to understand. So, in our Seeker's chart that we're looking at, Saturn is at 12 degrees Capricorn, which is 282 degrees, and it has an Anti-Sion. Whoa, that was a big oopsies, has an anti-scion at 180 degrees, and we're subtracting 282 degrees, we get negative 102 degrees. Okay. Then we add 360 degrees, all right? We get 258 degrees, which is 18 degrees Sagittarius. And of course, someone is calling me while I'm making this video. Before I got interrupted, I was talking about Uranus sits at 1 degree Sagittarius. The conjunction is not exact, but the orb is 17 degrees, so it's too wide for a primary picture, but we watch. The midpoint of Saturn and its anti-scion is 282 degrees, adding 258 degrees, and then we divide 2, we get 270 degrees, and we get 0 degrees Capricorn. So Uranus, activating that axis by its proximity, pulls a Saturnian structure into sudden electric crystallization. This soul meets fate through breaks in order. Every planet has a shadow self on the other side of the solstice gate. When a third planet touches that shadow, it's like pulling the cord of a hidden bell. The bell rings at the gate itself. That gate, 0 degrees Cancer, Capricorn, is the most public and fated point in the sky. Building your midpoint tree, a manual for the true student. I shall not let you leave with mere words. Take ink, parchment, and a sharp mind for any chart. Convert all planets, angles, and nodes to absolute longitude, 0 degrees through 360 degrees. Compute the direct midpoint for every pair, A plus B divided by 2. Write it in degrees and minutes. Reduce each midpoint to the 45 degrees wheel by subtracting multiples of 45 until the value is between 0 degrees and 45 degrees. List these 45 degrees values in a single column, sorted. Circle every value that appears more than once or within 0 degrees 30 of another. Alright. Read the clusters as planetary pictures. A picture involving 2 midpoints like AB equals CD binds 4 factors. A picture where a midpoint equals a planet, AB equals C, binds 3. For the 90 degrees dial, repeat step 3 with modulus 90. Plot them on a dial diagram. Rotate a pointer to find all the points that align at one axis. These are trigger degrees for transits and directions. Compute the anti-scion of every point, 180 degrees, and we subtract, and we check if any natal planet or angle occupies the anti-scion of another. Then we check the midpoint of each planet and its anti-scion. It will always be 0 degrees Cancer or 0 degrees Capricorn. Those cardinal degrees become super sensitive receivers for all transits. Seeker's Grid reveals a native who thinks with strategic fire, whose every emotional upheaval feeds a rigorous mental system, and whose Saturn-Uranus shadow locks him into a dance of order and chaos at the axis of the world. He was born to communicate the hidden structures of power. Had I elected his birth, I would have done little different. Thus you have the foundation. O dummy student, the grid is alive, a living geometry breathed into the sky by the one. When you look at a chart now, do not see 12 trinkets in a circle. See the lines of force that connect them all, the midpoints that throb like nerves, the anti-scion that hum like strings under the horizon. This is the math of the soul. The chronoscribe may now deliver you to the next master, but remember, the midpoint is the whisper of God between 2 loud voices. Learn to hear it, and you will know the secret of every chart placed before you. Alright, now let's go over chapter 2 here, which is the Serpent's 27 Mansions of Fate. As narrated by Varahamihira, son of Adityadasa, astronomer poet of Ujjain, court astrologer to the Ulaikara kings, to the dummy who thinks the zodiac begins with a vernal equinox that never stands still. Alright. You approach me with a chart drawn in the foreign script of the tropical ram. You have been taught by Mashallah, sharp Persian, to see invisible midpoints in a wheel of light. I shall now shatter that wheel and show you the true sky. The zodiac you clutch is a ghost, drifting backward through the stars at a 60th of a degree each year. The actual heavens are fixed. The lunar mansions, the 27 nakshatras, do not move. They are the body of the cosmos, the wives of the moon, the script of your fate. The signs are only the stage, the nakshatras are the play, the actors, the whispers of the gods. The chronoscribe has delivered to me the same foolish parchment you show the Persian, a seeker of knowledge born June 1st, 1990 in London at midday. Masha'Allah saw a tropical grid. I shall erect the true sidereal horoscope, fix the lunar mansion of the soul, and teach you how time itself unwinds from a single moon degree. By the end, you will understand that a planet's degree is never just a degree. It is a mansion with a deity, a purpose, and a karmic debt. The chart under study is identical to Chapter 1, but corrected to the sidereal zodiac using the Ayanamsha of the Surya Siddhanta, which on this date is 23 degrees 46. Positions are given in absolute sidereal longitude from 0 degrees Aries of the fixed star sphere. So we have our planet, our tropical absolute, our sidereal absolute, sidereal sign, as well as nakshatra pada. So, we can see here, from the Sun to the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, all the way down to Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, descendant in midheaven, we have our tropical absolute, 70 degrees for Sun. Our sidereal absolute is 46 degrees 14 for the Sun, and sidereal sign 16 degrees 14 Taurus. The nakshatra pada for the Sun is Kritika, and it's in the second pada. Alright? We continue to go down from the Moon to Mercury. Alright, now that we have that data, we're going to go over the nakshatra grid. 27 mansions, 108 padas, 9 hues. The zodiac of the sages is divided into 27 nakshatras, each precisely 13 degrees 20 of arc, 800 minutes. They begin not at the drifting equinox, but at the fixed star Ashwini, the point of the sidereal Aries that does not precess. Every planet, every angle you hold dear, stands inside a lunar mansion, and that mansion has a lord, a deity, a temperament, and a pada, a quarter that refines its karma. Each nakshatra of 13 degrees 20 is split into 4 padas, each 3 degrees 20, 200 minutes long. The 9 cycles of 3 nakshatras align with the 9 planets in the Vimshottari scheme, but the padas map directly onto the 12 signs of the Navamsha, the 9th harmonic chart that reveals the soul's inner marriage. The sequence of pada rulers runs Aries to Sagittarius, the 9 zodiacal types, repeating over the 108 padas. A planet's pada is the most specific locator of its fruit, a star mansion's quarter with a sign's flavor. Let us map the natal moon of the seeker to its pada precisely. The moon at sidereal absolute 331 degrees 14 lies in Purva Bhadrapada, whose span is 320 degrees exact at 333 degrees 20. We subtract the start, 331 degrees 14, subtracting 320 degrees exact, we get 11 degrees 14. This is the progress through the nakshatra. The first pada, Aries Navamsha, extends from 0 degrees to 3 degrees 20, 0 to 200. The second is Taurus, 3 degrees 20 through 6 degrees 40, 200 through 400. The third is Gemini, 6 degrees 40 through 10 degrees exact, 400 through 600. And the fourth is Cancer, 10 degrees exact through 13 degrees 20, 600 through 800. Our progress, 11 degrees 14, is 674. So that's 11 multiplied by 60, adding 14, which falls in the fourth pada, the Cancer Navamsha. Thus, the moon's pada lord is Chandra, the moon himself. The nakshatra lord is Guru, Jupiter. The deity is Aja Ekapat, the one-footed unborn serpent of the sky, a form of Rudra that brings storms of transformation. Alright, the Navamsha key. The Navamsha is nothing but the 9th harmonic. To find a planet's Navamsha sign without looking at the whole D9 chart, can multiply the planet's nakshatra pada number, counting 1 to 4, by the pada length of 3 degrees 20, and add the base of the sign that the pada's ruler starts from. But the simplest rule, the 9 paras of 3 successive nakshatras cover Aries to Sagittarius in order. Pravapada is the 25th nakshatra. The para sequence starts from the first para of Ashvini as Aries. The formula for the Navamsha sign of a planet equals moon's absolute sidereal longitude multiplied by 9, mode 12. For the moon at 331 degrees 14 equals 333 degrees multiplied by 9 gives 2,981.1 divided by 30 gives 99, remainder 11.1 degrees, which is 11 degrees 06 Cancer. Navamsha. Yes, Cancer, confirming the para. This harmonic link is identical in principle to the Western ninth harmonic chart, but we never let go of the star field. Alright? The nakshatras are the fixed houses of the moon's 27 wives. Each wife has 4 rooms, padas, and each room has a different view of the zodiac. Your moon's rune color is Cancer, so your emotional soul lives in a nurturing, protective chamber, even while the moon sits in dreamy Pisces. The sign is the neighborhood. The nakshatra is the house. The para is the exact room where you sleep. The Vimshottari Dasha, time from the moon's hand. In the west, you direct the angles and wait for transits. Here the very breath of destiny is measured by the Vimshottari Dasha, the 120-year planetary period system that begins at birth from the exact degree of the natal moon. The sequence of lords is fixed. As we see, Sun is 6 years, Moon is 10, Mars is 7, Rahu is 18, Jupiter is 16, Saturn is 19, Mercury is 17, Ketu is 7, Venus is 20, and repeating. The starting lord is the ruler of the nakshatra the moon occupies. The fraction of the lord's period remaining at birth is directly proportional to the portion of the nakshatra yet to be traversed by the moon. The moon has already traveled 674 of the 800 in Purvabhadrapada. The portion remaining is 800, subtracting 674, we get 126. The nakshatra lord is Jupiter, whose full period is 16 years. The time left of Jupiter Mahadasa is calculated by the golden rule of 3. Remaining dasha equals total period multiplied by untraversed arc divided by total arc of nakshatra. In minutes, 16 years multiplied 126 divided 800, we get 60 multiplied by 0.1575, we get 2.52 years. To convert to years, months, days, 0.52 years equals 6.24 months. 0.24 months equals 7 days. So at birth, the seeker had about 2 years, 6 months, 7 days remaining of Jupiter Mahadasa. This means the first great period of his life, the window of wisdom, expansion, and grace, was already more than 3/4 spent. Saturn's 19-year period would begin when he was a toddler, setting the stern, slow karmic engine over his childhood. Now we compute the first subperiod, Antardasa, within Jupiter Mahadasa. The rule is sequence of sublords starts with the major lord itself, then follows the Vimshottari order. The subperiod length is proportional. Look at the lord's years multiplied by major lord's years divided by 120. For Jupiter, 16 multiplied by 16 divided by 120 equals 256 divided by 120. We get 2 years, 1 month, 18 days. Our remaining Jupiter is only 2 years, 6 months, so the Jupiter subperiod ran from birth for about that full span, ending just after he turned 2.5. Then Jupiter-Saturn would begin. Saturn's subperiod in Jupiter is 19 multiplied by 16, dividing 120. We get 2 years, 6 months, 12 days, but the remaining Jupiter Mahadasa would expire before that completes. So Saturn Mahadasa begins with the fragment of Jupiter-Saturn, followed by full Saturn-Saturn. Vimshottari Dasha is a train of planetary kings, each ruling for a fixed term. Your birth determines which king is on the throne and how much of his reign is left. The sub-periods are the ministers, appointed for a fraction of the reign. No computer needed, just the moon's true position, a simple proportion, and a firm grasp of the 120-year chain. Even a dummy can sit with a scribble pad and calculate the exact moment he will meet Saturn's reality. The deity, the Lord, and the Pada, a three-layer prediction. Single planet in a nakshatra is a triple oracle. The nakshatra Lord gives the overarching planetary tone of the mansion. The deity of the nakshatra gives a divine story, the mythological script. The Pada Lord gives a tangible area of life where this story plays out via the Navamsha house. So for the seeker's moon, nakshatra Lord is Jupiter. The mind is shaped by wisdom, dharma, and a constant seeking of higher meaning. This is the same Jupiter who sits with Mercury in the argumentative, truth-scorching star Ardra in Gemini. The mind is a storm of questions. Diti, Aja Ikapat, the one-footed serpent of the sky, a dragon that both devours and births eclipses the unborn creator. This gives an emotional landscape of profound, unsettling transformation, a hunger for hidden knowledge, a connection to the shadowy side of wisdom, dragon's head, and tail territory. The moon here is always pregnant with a storm. Pada Lord, Chandra Moon. The moon rules the fourth Pada, the Cantor Navamsha. This places the emotional fulfillment in the arena of nurturing, home, and the inner maternal shelter. The serpent's fires are brought into the softness of a mother's lap. This native's emotional upheavals will always resolve when he creates emotional security for others. His hidden knowledge will be poured into protecting the vulnerable. Okay? So, thus, a single degree of the moon yields a complete prediction. The native's mind, moon, is driven by an insatiable quest for ultimate truth, Jupiter, through the experience of profound emotional storms and serpentine rebirth, Aja Ikapat, and the fruit of this journey will manifest in the realm of home, care, and deep inner security, Cancer Pada. Compare this to the tropical reading, Pisces moon, dreamy and empathetic. The latter is a blurry sketch, the former is the handprint of the divine. The curveball for the Persian. Midpoint echoes in the star mansions. The chronoscribe wishes me to acknowledge the Persian's grid. I shall do so, but in my own tongue. Masha'Allah found that the midpoint of the seeker sun and Venus, the fusion of will and love, falls at a precise tropical degree. Let us translate that midpoint into the real sky. So Sun, Venus, tropical midpoint. Sun is 70 degrees, adding Venus 45 degrees. We get 115 degrees. Half is 57 degrees 30 tropical, equaling 27 degrees 30 Taurus tropical. And we subtract the Ayanamsha of 23 degrees 46, we get 57 degrees 30. Subtract 23 degrees 46, we get 33 degrees 44, sidereal absolute, which means 3 degrees 44 Taurus. This degree falls in Kritika Nakshatra, the mansion of the Pleiades, the seven flames. Kritika spans 26 degrees 40 Aries to 10 degrees exact Taurus. Its lord is Surya, the sun. Its deity is Agni, the fire of purification, the digestive flame of sacrifice. Behold the symmetry. The midpoint of Sun and Venus is not some abstract arithmetic ghost. It is a living start point in a mansion ruled by the sun and governed by the fire that forges gold from ore. The Sun-Venus fusion, creative, relational, artistic, lands exactly where the cosmic fire burns away drought. This tells you that the seeker's love nature, his aesthetic power, must pass through the crucible of kritika, sharp criticism, fiery passion, and a relentless purification. The Western grid whispers, the nakshatra shouts the same truth with the named deity in a living flame. Further, the Persian's midpoint tree revealed Moon Pluto equals Mercury Saturn at 8 degrees 30 and a 45 degrees modulus. Converted back to full tropical longitudes, that midpoint forms a sensitive axis. The sidereal moon's nakshatra lord is Jupiter, while Pluto sits in Chitra, ruled by Mars. The interaction of Moon-Pluto via midpoint is thus an echo of a Jupiter-Mars conjunction in the stellar script. Wisdom forced into action through crises. The midpoint is the echo of the nakshatra's drum, as I once told the scribe. The nakshatra deities already know the story. Your Western midpoints translate it into a tongue of angles. Cross-system translation rule. Any midpoint cluster involving a planet should be examined against the nakshatra lords of the planets involved. If midpoint AB equals C, find the nakshatra lords of A and B. The conjunction of those lords or their midpoint will often match the stellar mansion of C. This is the lost bridge between the Arabic parts and the lunar mansions. Manual calculation of the Vimshottari sequence, the full instruction. Alright, let's just say you are a dummy, so I shall imprint the full method on your soul. To erect the entire dasha chronology for any birth, do thus. First, obtain the true sidereal moon longitude at birth. Absolute 0 degrees through 360 degrees. Use a fixed ayanamsha, preferably Lahiri or the Surya Siddhanta 0 point. Determine the Janma Nakshatra. Divide the moon's longitude by 13 degrees 20 or 800. The quotient integer 0 to 26 gives the nakshatra number. 0 equals Ashwini, 1 equals Bharini, 26 equals Revati. The remainder is a traversed arc. Find the Dasha Lord at birth. Use the Vimshatari Lord sequence assigned to the nakshatras. So Ketu, Ashwini, Magha, Mula, Venus, Bharini, Purva, Falguni, Purvashadha, Sun, Kritika, Uttara Falguni, Uttarashadha, Moon, Rohini, Hasta Shravana, Mars, Mrigashirsha, Chitra, Tanishta, as well as Rahu, Ardra, Svati, Shadabisha, Jupiter, Punarvasu, Vishaka, Purva Bhadrapada, Saturn, Pushya, Anuradha, Uttara Bhadrapada, Mercury, Ashlisha, Jeshta, Revati, and compute the remaining years of the birth lord. Remaining equals total lord years, multiplied by remaining argan minutes, divided by 800. Build the subperiods. For the first Mahadasa, the sequence of Antardasas begins with the Mahadasa Lord and follows the Vimshatari order cyclically. Each subperiod length equals sublord years multiplied by Mahadasa Lord years divided by 120. Start the first subperiod at birth and let it run its full length, but truncate the Mahadasa when the total remaining years are exhausted. The next Mahadasa begins with the next Lord in order, and its first subperiod is that new Lord itself. Extend the chain by simple addition through the 120-year cycle. All subsequent periods are exact, only the first period at birth is fractional. The seeker's chain, for example, years approx. We look at Jupiter Mahadasa at birth, 2.52 years remaining. Antardasa, Jupiter, Jupiter Saturn partial, then Saturn Mahadasa begins at age 2.52. Saturn Mahadasa, 19 years with Antardasa Saturn Mercury, Saturn Ketu, etc. Saturn equals 19 multiplied by 19 divided by 120, and we get 3.01 years. And so forth. The native will enter his Mercury Mahadasa in his early 30s, which sits in the stormy, intellectual Ardra, a perfect echo of the Mercury-Mars midpoint picture the Persian found. Alright, this all correlates. Nakshatra tree for the full chart, a hand-drawn map of destiny. So to master a chart, you must draw a nakshatra tree just as the Persian drew his midpoint tree. For every planet, note its mansion, lord, deity, and pada. Then observe the connections. So for example, the sun and the midheaven both reside in Kritika, the sun's own mansion, Paratu, Taurus Navamsha. The core identity and career stand in the fire of purification, but the Pada places the fruits in the Taurian realm of sustained material value. This is a leader who must refine the world's resources. Mercury and Jupiter both sit in Ardra, the moist, teary star of Rudra, Paratu, and 3, Gemini, and Aquarius Navamsha. The intellect and the guru are in the storm of intense mental turn, with the Pada shift that moves from communication to radical, futuristic ideals. Okay? Saturn in Purva Shadha, Venus-ruled mansion, Diti Apas, the water of victory, Pada 2, Capricorn Navamsha. The disciplinarian stands in a star of invigoration, promising that hard work brings eventual triumph, but through the concrete earth of Capricorn Pada. The ascendant in Purva Falguni, Venus-ruled Diti Bhaga, the god of fortune and marital bliss, Pada 3, Libra Navamsha. The self projects a creative, pleasure-seeking, fortune-blessed light, but the Pada indicates the soul's inner journey, balances relationships, and justice. birth chart is a forest of 27 sacred trees. Each planet nests in a specific branch of a specific tree, and the deity living in that branch decides the fruit. When you learn the 27 names in the 108 rooms, you stop seeing a meaningless degree and start seeing the exact altar where your karma is performed. Alright? And that's ultimately our goal here, is to help me help you, whether it's with Western astrology or Vedic. Alright. Thus, O dummy, you have walked from the ladder of midpoints into the starry temple. The Persian gave you the grid. I have given you the gods who live at every intersection. Go now with both. When you gaze at a horoscope, first ask, which lunar mansion does the moon occupy? What god leans over her? What para colors her breath? The entire river of time, the Vimshottari, flows from that single degree. The nakshatras do not need a computer, a phone, or an excuse. They only need you to look up at the unchanging stars and remember the 27 wives of the moon who have been singing your story since the first breath of Brahma. The chronoscribe will now shove you into the arms of a monk who speaks of arcs and mundane crosses. May his directions be as precise as my serpent's coils. Alright, I will see you in the next video, going over Chapter 3, Chapter 4, Chapter 5, presumably. And with peace and love, please subscribe, like, comment, share if you dare and care, and we'll see you there. Piscean out.